Greetings, my name is Odin from the Odin's Musings YouTube channel, and I'm here on behalf of Aura Crystals. Today I'm going to be teaching you all about the Brickstitch, which is a very basic fundamental stitch that you will learn on your jewelry making adventure. The Brickstitch gets its name based off of the orientation of the beads. They basically have a staggered alignment where they have two beads and one bead in between, kind of like 1, 2, 1, 2, just like the pattern of a brick wall. This is most commonly used with wide, flat stitches, and creations such as bracelets and cuffs, rings, even wide tapestries, and amulet bags. If you're brand new to beading, but you've done a little hand sewing, this stitch might come really easy to you. For this project, I'm going to be using two contrasting colors of size 11 Delica beads. You can use whichever seed bead you would like. I just find that Delicas, since they're uniformly cut, make a very nice, even pattern in the final product. I'm also using a D-weight white Nymo, as well as a size 10 beading needle. You'll find a detailed list of materials as well as links to where you can purchase in the description box below. And so, let us get started. Now the Brickstitch requires a foundation row of ladder stitch, which I will show you how to do here. If you need more information on that, you can also find a link to the ladder stitch video down in the description as well as in the corner in a card. So I'm going to start off by threading on two beads, passing them down, leaving about a 4 to 6 inch tail so that I can weave in my threads later. I'm going to pull apart my two beads and then pass through the first bead again, so that when I pull tight, the second bead moves and sits next to the first bead. Then I'm going to set up my next stitch by passing through the second bead. I'm going to add on one more bead, and then since my thread is going down, I'm going to continue that by passing down the second bead so that my third bead anchors to the second. I'm going to pass up through the third bead to set it for the next stitch. Add on one bead. Since my thread is going up, I'm going to continue that orientation by passing up and then anchoring the new bead. Like that. Then to continue, I'm going to pass down through the last bead that we've added, add on a new bead, pass down, and then back up. Add one more bead. Then, since my thread is going upwards, pass up to anchor my next bead, then pass down. Then we'll add one more bead, pass down, then go up. And you'll continue in this manner until you have the length that you want. Now we need to make a nice and even foundation so that the Brickstitch can sit nicely on top of it, and you'll notice that some of the beads are a little off-kilter. So we'll fix this simply by going up and down the beads once more and go backwards so that we make everything nice and uniform. So I'm just going up and down until I get to the other side. And finally, back up. Now I have a nice and tidy ladder stitch base where I can begin my Brickstitch. So to start in my Brickstitch, I'm going to add two beads. Then I'm going to go through this thread bridge that is in between the first and second beads. We're not actually going through any beads to start the stitch. So when I pull tight, my two new beads will sit next over. And to set up the stitch, I'm just going to pass through the second bead. When I pull tight, things will be nicely snug to begin my next stitch. So from there, I'm going to add one bead, pick up and go beneath the thread bridge that is in the next set of two beads. Pull tight so that the bead sits next to it. Then move up to set up for my next stitch. Add one bead, go underneath the thread bridge, then pass up through the same bead that we just added. Now be careful when you're doing this. This is a very precarious stitch, and because this is so tiny, it can kind of get precarious when you're starting off the first few rows, because this is so hard to hold at once sometimes, and since your finger is really close to the needle, you are in real danger of poking yourself pretty frequently. So be careful when you're doing that. Take it slow and don't force the needle underneath the thread bridges. So moving on, add one more bead. Go beneath the thread bridge and set up by passing through the bead we just added. Once more, add one bead, go beneath the thread bridge between the two beads, pull tight, go up the last bead you've added. Once more for this row, one bead, go beneath the last thread bridge, and set up for the next stitch. Now we've finished this row, we need to start a new one, because we've run out of thread bridges. So to start off, we add 2 beads. Every time we start a new row, we just add 2 beads, go beneath the first thread bridge, pull tight, flip our beads down so they sit nice and pretty. Then we go up through the second bead. From there I can continue adding on 1 bead, passing through the next thread bridge, then moving up through the bead we've just added. And we just continue in this pattern until we've finished our row, picking up the thread bridge and moving up the next bead we've added. Add a bead beneath the thread bridge, up the next bead. We keep going, add 1 bead, pass underneath the next thread bridge between 2 beads, pull tight, move up through the last bead we've added. Add 1, go through our last thread bridge, then go up through the last bead we've added. We have finished our row, and we're ready to start a new one. So we add 2 beads, and we pick up the first thread bridge in our row, pull down so that these 2 beads sit nicely on top, pass our needle through the second bead, add 1 bead, then continue on. Repeat this going back and forth until you got about 7 to 10 rows, and then I'll show you how to end threads and add new ones. So ending your thread is really simple. All we need to do is weave up and down through the top row until we reach the other end. So all I'm going to do is pass through the top row of beads. So we just go up and down, until we're at the other end. And I'm at my last bead. This is good enough to be secure all by itself, but if you want, you can pass back through the second bead and go down and just kind of weave in some more threads that way. But as it stands right now, I'm just going to cut my thread and attach a new one. And you can also weave in your tail end and work those threads as well. Now, when it comes to adding a new thread, there are a few things you need to consider. To start a new row on top of this previous row, you need to end up in the shorter row, the bead that is not sticking out, compared to on this side where the bead overhangs on top of the white row. Over here, the white row overhangs on top of the green row. Now the reason is if we ended up in the sticky outy part on this side and we added our 2 beads, we'll end up with a white bead hanging out outside our border past beyond the width of our piece. Then you'll also want your thread coming up, and if you are passing your beads through, you might end up going downwards. To prevent that, if you are going through an even number of beads, when you put your needle in, you're going to start by going downward and then weaving up and down all the way until you reach the final bead. That way you should end up with your thread coming upwards. Now, since I have an odd number of beads, I have 7 beads in this row, I'm going to pass upwards through my work and go from there. I'm going to leave a small tail that I can hold on to so I don't pull too tight. Then I'm just going to go up and down once again through all of these beads. Go down number 4, up 5, down 6, and finally up 7. And now my thread is in the appropriate position. And if I pull this tight, that's secure. My tail is secure. I can go ahead and clip my tail. And from here, I'm ready to start my new row. Then I continue weaving back and forth until I have the length that I want. And that is it for the brick stitch. It's a very rigid, rugged stitch. It's very durable and kind of on the stiff side. So it's a great beginning stitch and a very durable piece to work with. Thank you so much for joining me on this lesson, and be sure to check out the description box for a full materials list, as well as links to where you can purchase materials. Feel free to subscribe to Aura Crystals to get updates on new tutorials and new design ideas, and if you'd like to learn more about my work, feel free to check me out on Odin's Musings right here on YouTube or at Odin's Bead Hall.